The Battle of Manila. Largest and first battle of the Philippine-American War, a war between the United States and Filipino revolutionaries from 1899 to 1902, an insurrection that may be seen as a continuation of the Philippine Revolution against Spanish rule. Filipino hopes that the U.S. defeat of their Spanish colonial masters in the Spanish-American War of 1898 would bring independence to the Philippines were dashed when the United States annexed the islands for itself. The war began with a brief but bloody clash between Filipino independence fighters and U.S. troops in Manila. After pushing back the Filipino lines in the First Battle of Manila and the suburbs on February the 4th to 10th, 1899, Major General Luis Ocies waited for more reinforcements from the United States. The attack occurred on February the 22nd. At around 8 p.m., fire broke out in the wealthy Corte and Santa Cruz district. During the 19th century, the Parian neighborhood of Santa Cruz commanded the highest in rental prices compared to those in other districts of Manila. Businessmen, especially the foreigners, preferred the structures of Santa Cruz, especially those warehouses along the Pasig River, which facilitated the swifter delivery of their merchandise through the cascos or boats that plied the city's esteros. The Battle of Paye was a battle during the Philippine-American War between the United States and the Philippines. It was fought on December the 19th, 1899, near San Mateo in what was then Manila Province, now Rizal, between the forces of General Henry Ware Lawton and General Licerio Geronimo's Morong Command Battalion and the Tirados de la Muerta. Lawton was killed in the battle, making him the highest-ranking American commander to die in the Philippine conflict. On December the 19th, the 11th captured Montalban, while Sargent's squadron made for San Mateo, approaching the Filipinos in rain and mist. The Filipinos forced Lawton's troops to scramble for cover in the rice fields. Lawton walked up and down the line in a white raincoat and pith helmet, rallying his men even after his aide was struck. Lawton died from a bullet to the chest from a Filipino sniper by the name of Bonifacio Mariano. Sargent located a fort allowing his men to cross the river and drove the defenders from San Mateo. On this spot on the morning of December the 19th, 1899, occurred a historic battle during the Filipino-American War between the forces of Licerio Geronimo, Division General of the Revolutionary Army of Rizal, together with his band of marksmen called Tirados de la Muerta, and American forces led by Commanding General Henry W. Lawton. That consisted of battalions from the 29th Infantry, 27th Infantry, and a cavalry and foot squadron from the 11th Cavalry. Killed during this battle faced by the forces of General Geronimo was General Lawton, one of the highest-ranking American military officials during the Filipino-American War. The Battle of Zapot River, also known as the Battle of Zapot Bridge, was fought on June the 13th, 1899, between 1,200 Americans and between 4,000 to 5,000 Filipinos. It was the second largest battle of the Philippine and American War after the Battle of Manila 5 months before in February 1899. Zapot River separates the town of Las Piñas in what was then Manila Province from Bacoor in the province of Cavite. The ruins of Zapot Bridge still stands next to its replacement bridge on Aguinaldo Highway. The reconnected Zapot River Bridge in 1899 being guarded by an American soldier taken after the Battle of June the 13th, 1899 between Filipino and American soldiers during the Philippine-American War. One span of the bridge was removed by the locals and substituted by a wooden span, which was burned down, on or before the fighting. The battle began when U.S. Major Bell with the 4th Cavalry, while on a reconnaissance mission, came upon a strong Filipino position led by Colonel Pablo Texan, a revolutionary officer from San Miguel, Bulacan, who was under command of General Gregorio del Pilar. The Filipinos laid down heavy fire which halted Bell's cavalry advance. After a short firefight, Bell recognized his position was badly exposed to the opposition, and as a result his force risked defeat. Bell sent for reinforcements, and the 1st Nabascans came to his aid under Colonel John M. Stotzenberg, while Irving Hale sent companies from the 51st Iowa as well as artillery from the Utah Battery. Once he arrived on the field, Stotzenberg led the Nebraskan infantry, with a dozen or so cavalrymen in a charge on the enemy's position. The Filipinos held their ground and opened fire. Stotzenberg was one of the first to fall, a bullet to the heart. Several of the cavalrymen's mounts were also slain. The Filipino soldiers sustained the heavy fire, forcing the cavalrymen to retreat. The Nebraskans, only 200 in number, continued advancing under fire by the Filipino riflemen. Despite the accuracy and intensity of the riflemen's fire, the Nebraskan line continued to advance. Inevitably, the two forces clashed in close combat, but after an exhaustive battle, the Filipinos retreated. During the fight, Hale's brigade lost 7 men and 44 men were wounded. Beginning on March the 25th, the Americans began their drive to capture Malolos, the Philippine capital at the time, hoping that it would shatter the morale of the Filipino troops. This was achieved on March the 31st, amidst token resistance by about 5,000 Filipinos. The capital had already been transferred to San Isidro, Nueva Ecija, before the debacle, and the main Filipino force, under the command of General Antonio Luna, had moved to the Calumpit-Apalit line. MacArthur, meanwhile, rested with his troops in Malolos to prepare the drive against the Calumpit-Apalit line. The Battle of Cuenca, which occurred on April the 23rd, signaled the beginning of a new American offensive. It was one of the flanks in the Filipino line of defense. The Battle of Angeles was considered to be the longest in the history of the Filipino-American War in Pampanga. This led to the establishment of an American camp in Barrio Talimon Dock in what is now Lourdes Shore, located next to the railroad station, in order to establish control over the central plains of Luzon. In January 1900, General Frederick D. Grant organized the first U.S. civil government in Angeles by appointing an alcalde or municipal mayor, beginning American rule over Angeles. The Battle of San Fernando took place on July 25, 1927 during the American occupation of Nicaragua of 1926 and 1933. Shortly after the Battle of Ocotl, an expedition of 78 American Marines and 37 Nicaraguan Provisional Guardsmen led by Major Oliver Floyd was sent hunting for rebel leader Augusto Cesar Sandino. One of their destinations was the town of San Fernando, where Sandino had about 40 men waiting for the Marines and their Nicaraguan allies. In this battle, the Filipino General Francisco Macabulo's Guaysalan surrendered to the Americans due to lack of arms and ammunition. He gave up with 9 officers and 124 men. He turned over 124 firearms. In this battle, the Filipinos surrendered to Americans along with the other 2 towns in the Nueva Ecija province, Coayapo and Guimba. In this battle, Commodore George Dew sent Colonel John T. Loper and an escort with a flag of truce to the Filipino commander. Commodore George Dew demanded the Filipinos are to evacuate San Roque before 9 o'clock the following morning. General Franklin Bell saw military action in the Philippine-American War as a major in 1898. By 1902, he was a general in the army and was in charge of pacifying the southern Tagalog area. In particular, he became infamous because of his reconcentration policy in Batangas, which was aimed at isolating the Filipino guerrillas. Everyone was either an enemy or a friend of the United States. Neutrality in the war was not an option for anyone. He ordered all residents to move to the reconcentration zone area by Christmas of 1901 and to bring all the supplies they could. By January the 1st, those outside the zone area and bearing no pass will be arrested and those attempting to flee will be shot. He ordered the confiscation or destruction of all the supplies outside the zone area. So effective was the Batangas campaign that in 7 months, General Miguel Malvar, whose guerrilla forces operated in that province, was forced to surrender with his 3,000 troops. But the reconcentration was a destructive campaign. It was estimated that due to war, pestilence, and famine, only 200,000 of the former 300,000 population of Batanga survived. Ironically, despite the brutality of his campaign, he was merely chastised by the U.S. Senate.